Question number 3. This is a good one. With Halloween, are we desensitizing our kids to darkness? That's a great question. It's a very important question. I'm glad it was asked. Let me just say this. The decision to participate in Halloween is a personal decision, and I would say it's a matter of convictions or personal values that you have in your life. Many in the room were raised, no problem, trick or treat and go do that. Never even gave thought to what the holiday itself was about. We saw it as a time to put a costume on and go play and have fun. And then others were like, no, like it was this way or that way, right? It was all that. When I've studied a lot about the holiday, and so I had an aversion to it and just pushed back on that. And that's a personal conviction of mine. I don't apply that to you. I apply that to me based on the origins of that holiday. It was Celtic, and then from the Celts, the Catholic Church picked it up. And they said, this is actually a celebration of saints. It's All Saints Day on November the 1st. So Halloween is the eve of the hallowed. That's why the 31st is Halloween, and the first day, November, would be the All Saints Day, celebrating those men and women that God used mightily. Wonderful. All of that, I'm telling you right now, 99% of people in our culture today don't even think about any of that when it comes to that day. It's not on the radar. When Caleb was being raised in our home, we didn't celebrate Halloween, but I'll tell you what we did do. We went to the Halloween stores, and after Halloween, we bought everything we could find for him after Halloween, because sometimes Tarzan would be running through the house, other times Batman was coming through the house. You never knew who was going to come through the house, and he was loaded. He had a drawer full of, like, we loaded him up. Sometimes Cindy's running through the house like Pocahontas, like it was just all that. And so anyway, playing now, yeah, but we didn't participate in that, in the celebration of that. Here's what I would say: if the holiday itself, if it violates your faith or your conscience, don't do it. Don't do it. If it doesn't bother you, be careful. Just be aware that there is some purpose, meaning it didn't come out of anywhere. It does have origins. And if you want to look into it, you can. But let me speak about this for Free Life Chapel when it comes to our stance because of our outreach. I wanted Caleb to understand what the purpose of the holiday was, which when all of his friends were out there participating, I told him why we didn't do it. We don't want to lean into that personally. That was our conviction. But at Free Life Chapel, we do. So what happened? Well, here's the deal. My position on the issue of recognizing Halloween has shifted, but it has not changed. I recognize it, I just don't celebrate it, and I want to talk to you about the difference there, how we look at it at Free Life Chapel. Today, if you don't know this, in the fall, our trunk or treat is the number one highest outreach event that we have at Free Life Chapel. Last year, we had over 6,000 that showed up on our property that they're going to come out with their families. They were having great fun. Families were having a blast. Kids were having a blast. Loving it. The chance to shake hands, hug necks, meet the community. That's what our heart was. If the community is going to celebrate, then let's give them a place to celebrate it and get the chance to get to know them and maybe have them come visit with us on a Sunday. Truth is, there's people in this room today that you joined us for the first time on the property for that event, and now you're here today. I love that. But I want to show you why we do that. We have Bible to this. It's not just opinion. 1 Corinthians chapter 9, verse 22 states this. This is Paul talking, the quarterback of Christianity. Here's what he says. I have become all things to all people so that by all possible means I might save some. How do you think that's a pretty passionate verse right there? I become all things to all people so that by all possible means I might save some. Well, let me show you how he lived that out, because that wasn't just a cool verse. Paul wrecked the religious crowd. They were so angry with him in these New Testament times, because Paul goes to this place called Athens, Greece. Okay, Athens, they worshiped everything, like everything and everyone. They didn't want to make anybody mad, so they just worshiped it all. And just in case they missed one, they had an altar built to the unknown God. Just in case, because we don't make anybody mad, like all of them. Paul steps into Athens amongst all this paganism. Paul is a Christ follower. He steps into an arena where there's paganism everywhere. They're worshiping idols. They're sacrificing animals to these gods. Paul steps into there around these people, in the midst of them, and he looks back at them and he comments on their devotion. Wow, you all are devoted. You all are serious in your worship to your gods, and commends them and honors them in the sense of their devotion, not to the God they're serving, but their devotion. I got to tell you, when I read my Bible and I come to that passage, I'm hit and I'm reminded really quickly. I differ greatly, abjectly, on a spiritual and religious, theological basis with the Muslim community. They're precious people. They're sweet, but theologically, I disagree. But you know what I've got to say? I've got to give respect, because 5 times a day, those folks believe what they're doing. And they're following their faith, like it or not, here they go. And then I look back at the church and go, can we just get together once a week and say, I love you, Jesus? The devotion, you have to respect that when they say they believe, and they go hard. And so there is nothing wrong with identifying that. That's what Paul did. Paul said, I recognize and your devotion is amazing to see. And then Paul used an idol amongst all their idols in order to preach an illustrated message. He said, this idol that you have to the unknown God, let me tell you about him. And Paul used an idol that would, if you want to get technical, violated Exodus chapter 20, don't have any graven images, don't have any of the gods before me. And Paul is using an idol, not saying that was God, but using it to represent, because that's what the culture bought into. And Paul said, I need to use what you see and you understand already. Let me use that to show you who Jesus is and share the message. Again, I've become all things to all people, so that by all possible means I might save some. Paul then goes on and he starts talking about how educated he is. Well, Paul wasn't an egomaniac, but he's talking to community leaders, and he needed them to know, I'm not a religious dummy. I can go head to head with all of your PhDs. I can discuss law with you, and I can talk you into a corner. Based on that, he earned a reputation and a level of credibility to be heard in the culture. And then he used it to share the love of Jesus, not how great he was, but how great Jesus is. Paul engaged the culture, didn't run from the culture, and now he had voice in the culture. So here's what Paul's MO was, and here's what our MO is. Engage the culture for relationships that will open the doors for ministry. Engage the culture. I could care less about an egg for Easter. I could care less. But the community wants it. They're going to celebrate it somewhere. So if we can create a place that we can connect, and they come to this property and begin to shake hands and welcome, then our heart and our spirit can be used in that capacity to touch people and affect them for the kingdom of God. And this is why we do what we do. Paul never compromised God's standards or scriptures, but I will tell you what he did compromise: the traditions of the church. He violated the traditions of the church. You can't do that. You can't do that. Show me Bible. Well, I can't. I just know you can't. Well, why can't you? Because my church taught. Okay, but the church might have taught you something that's not even scriptural. It was a preference. It was a position, but it wasn't Bible. I just want to make sure that we come back into that alignment. Paul said, I will violate tradition all day in order to reach someone with the good news of Jesus Christ. And so if it's something that you say, it's good, I can do this, then go right ahead. Walk with caution and make sure that our focus on that day is that we're not celebrating the darkness and evil. Of course, we want to make sure that it's time that if our kids are going to participate, there's something that can be wholesome in our family together. If it does violate your conscience, then don't participate and raise your family that way. But just be really careful that we're not throwing sticks and stones at each other when the Bible gives us some levity to move in this capacity.